Sign up for something. Everyone's eager to meet you.
I'm not really a joiner.
I thought you might say that.
In episode 3 of Yellowjackets, Nat decides to clean up after the previous night's bacchanal party and dispose of Jackie's body once and for all by taking her remains to the plain to be buried once the ground thaws. Nat goes alone to complete this task, refusing Lottie's wilderness Kool-Aid before packing up the bones and hiking out. Once she reaches the plain, something very important happens to Nat that not only proves her strength and determination, but also shows exactly what the wilderness thinks of Nat herself. A large white moose tromps through the quiet forest, and Nat hears it approaching. She tries to shoot the animal, but misses, enraging the volatile moose. It charges at the plain, but cannot fit its massive antlers through the doorway. As Nat gets ready to take another shot, the animal disappears back through the curtain of trees. It's too bad she misses catching dinner, but could the encounter with the white moose mean something much more? As the hunters of the group, Nat and Travis go out hunting every single day but have not seen any game since the snow fell. As we saw in episode 2, the hungry group of survivors were finally driven to the unthinkable, cannibalizing Jackie's body, which cooked rather than cremated, on her funeral pyre. Interestingly, we should not forget that Nat had also faked Javi's death in episode 2 by giving Travis a pair of his brother's torn-up pants that she had used to soak up blood from a self-inflicted wound, making it look as though Javi had been killed. Travis was devastated, and he placed the bloody pants on Jackie's funeral pyre to burn with her, but the blood on the pants was actually Nat's. Now, depending on how the wilderness accepts its offerings, Nat may have unknowingly made a blood sacrifice to the wild when she cut her leg and burned the pants along with Jackie's body in the pyre. There is most certainly some magical recipe there. With that in mind, is it simply a coincidence that the first wild animal they had seen in months showed up the very next morning while Nat was out on her own? Let's explore the mythology behind the white moose and why the Yellowjacket showrunners chose this animal to cross paths with Nat at this very moment. White animals, or albino animals, are particularly sacred no matter what species. According to the lore of the Mi'kmaq people, killing a white moose is a bad omen. Many First Nations tribes hold white and albino animals sacred, such as the buffalo, while other white animals are revered around the world by many cultures, such as lions, bulls, giraffes, zebras, pythons, tigers, bats, and many, many more. The white stag is something I have discussed in other videos, linked below, and is symbolically linked to kingship. Encountering a white stag is proof of a chosen king or queen, and that the wilderness itself bows to them. We have seen examples of this in House of the Dragon or Snow White and the Huntsman. When these queens encounter their own white stags, it shows that Mother Nature approves of this ruler. Killing the white stag is a bad omen because it is an act of dominance over the land, rather than a balanced rule of man and earth. White animals are rare in nature and therefore a sign of purity and good fortune. So while Nat missing the shot may mean no dinner tonight, it is a much better omen overall for the group. And as for Nat herself, well, the wilderness may be sending a big message to her. Adult Lottie and Nat explore her commune compound, and Lottie shows Nat her beehives. She tells Nat about the queen bee, and how once she is chosen, she systematically kills the other queens so there can be only one. The other bees vibrate around her to keep her warm, just like Lottie and her heliotrope minions. However, by the end of the episode, something changes her buzz. Lottie has a vision while standing at her beehives. She sees the bees dead around their boxes, and when she pulls out a frame, it's coated in blood and death. One of her devotees approaches and says a familiar line. "Il veut des sang." Lottie comes out of her vision back to reality where her bees are fine and there was no blood at all. But she is clearly shaken, and we should definitely take some of the other events that happened in episode 3 into account. Lottie almost seemed like she was telling Nat the story about the queen bees as a flex. I mean, she has her cult and all her little bumblebees buzzing around her, keeping her warm, and we know heliotrope follows the sun. Lottie believes herself to be the queen bee. However, the scene of younger Nat encountering the white moose may indicate otherwise. The white moose is a good omen, a symbol of good fortune, fertility, plentiful rain, and a bountiful harvest. They are unique because, as white animals, they very often have difficulties camouflaging in the wilderness and therefore are often targeted by other animals. But in this circumstance, the white moose actually benefited from its color in the winter woods and was able to escape Nat's shot, ensuring her good omen stood firm. We might even look at the white moose as an embodiment of the wilderness that Nat came face to face with, and which stood its ground against her. In my last video, we talked about the origins that the word wilderness comes from. The Old English word wildearnes, which means wild and beast or deer. The white moose definitely fits this description, but there is something more. It was the Mi'kmaq people who held the white moose sacred specifically. These First Nations people are indigenous to northeastern Canada and Maine, the Atlantic provinces, and the Gaspé Peninsula in Quebec, and have inhabited those lands for 10,000 years. The Mi'kmaq people were amongst many indigenous tribes of North America who were horribly mistreated in the taking of their ancestral lands. They were sent to reservations, their children sent to residential schools, their ability to hunt and fish were restricted or exploited, and their spiritual beliefs, which are nature-based, were systematically demolished and replaced by Christianity. European diseases depleted their population by half in the span of 100 years. The stories from residential schools are particularly horrifying, and the truth about what these children endured has only come forth in the past few years. Interestingly, the current official language in Quebec is French.
It wants something, blood?
When the Yellowjackets hold their seance in Season 1, Episode 5, Lottie is possessed by some force of nature which, through her, speaks French and tells the girls he wants blood. Now, the girls made it perfectly clear that Lottie doesn't speak French, and neither do any of them, fluently. Whatever was working through Lottie was something foreign to her. With all of this in mind, it seems as though many of these things are interwoven. The white moose is a sacred animal to the Mi'kmaq people, and the animal clearly gave its blessing to Nat. Lottie is haunted by a premonition she received in French, and French is spoken on the stolen lands of the Indigenous First Nations people. At a certain point in history, anyone heading west toward the location the girls are trapped in would have come from the direction of the Mi'kmaq and passed through their lands, and if they picked up a curse along the way, may have brought it right to the very place the girls are now trapped. Could we be looking at a curse of some kind which is playing out through the girls trapped in the cabin? Nat has been blessed by her encounter with the white moose, but Lottie's visions of the dead bees seem to be a bad omen for her, after telling Nat that the queen bee must kill the others. We were told in Season 1 that Nat is the only reason the group got out of the wilderness, so it seems clear that Nat is the chosen one, and her encounter with the white moose represents as much. Lottie may believe she is the queen bee and leader of the pack, but once all the women are back together, it seems like even she can't stop what is coming. But what do you all think? Do you think the white moose was significant to Nat in particular? Was it an embodiment of the wilderness? Or perhaps just a hallucination like Coach Ben is having back at the cabin? Let me know your thoughts and questions in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. And please consider joining my Patreon to help support the channel, linked below. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
I'm gonna put a stop to your fucking bullshit. I don't know how yet, but I'm gonna stop it.
Well, at least you'll have to stay alive to do that, so it's a win for me.
You must spill blood. Or else.
Or else what, Lottie?